Again, I'm excited to get started with today's webinar, Becoming a Confident Writer. Your writing skills become more and more important as you continue down your academic career. And today, our presenters will help you understand and refine some of those key skills, like how to analyze both your instructions and your rubrics, locate scholarly articles, and apply some of the feedback from either your peers or your professors to your writing, and much more. We're joined by three of my colleagues from our very own Learning Services team, Alexis Miller, Francesca Guzman, and Dr. Amy Dietzman. So I'll go ahead and pass it on over to them.
All right, thanks so much, Maxine. So as you just heard, this is the third one in the series that we're doing this fall on student success. So in a couple of weeks, we'll do teamwork and collaboration. But if you missed the other two that we did, the one on AI and academic integrity or time and attention management, we'll show you at the end a link so that you can find those and watch the recordings if you're interested. So also, like Maxine just said, here's sort of what we're going to do today. We're going to talk a little bit about ways that you can become a better writer and feel more confident as a writer. And we'll talk a little bit about how you can analyze writing assignment directions, how you can find and properly, utilize scholarly resources, how you can scrutinize a rubric to get your best grade possible, apply instructor feedback to become a better writer, strengthen your ability to express your ideas, and use technology to your advantage. It's a jam-packed session. We've got a lot to go over today. But before we even get started and talk about writing, we need to start with reading because reading makes you a better writer. William Faulkner said, read everything, trash, classics, good and bad, and see how they do it. Just like a carpenter who works as an apprentice and studies the master. Read. So what's the last thing that you read? Did you take notice of the style of the writing, the structure of it, the word choice? These are ways that you can learn to be a better writer, to go just beyond reading the content, but also kind of studying how the writer does it. Solid writing isn't just for writing papers. We use writing for everything these days. We send emails, we write memos, we fire off text messages all day long. And as we shy away from face-to-face interactions in favor of the digital writing, writing becomes even more prominent. So here's a text message I received. Good morning, Amy. Hope you're doing well. Designed by you. Do you guys know I will text you this afternoon when I am heading your way because I was sheriff. Should be after 4 when I will get there today, but I will text you and let you know. Now, I had to read that as fast as I could. There's no punctuation. And, maybe this guy's with the sheriff, and that's why he's coming after 4. But can I have any confidence that that's the right interpretation? This is the classic case of just firing off a text message without proofreading. We all do this. I do it all the time. But this guy did this all the time to someone that isn't like a family member. So what does it say about him? Did I judge him based on this? Probably. People with weak writing skills are actually perceived as less reliable and trustworthy. And when I say I do this all the time, I should say, I don't think I ever typed anything quite that confusing. But sharpening your writing skill set not only helps you in your current job, but will also help you move up the corporate ladder. A study by Grammarly noted that having fewer grammatical errors in your writing correlates to more promotions and higher salaries. Did you know that solid writing can help you get along better with others? When you consider that so many companies have gone remote, or at least have remote options, a great deal of communication has shifted from face-to-face to online. We rely heavily on email and text and instant messenger platforms, and in a matter of seconds, your short email or IM exchange can charm someone or totally repel them, even when you don't mean to. Writing in school is more prevalent than it used to be. If you've been away from the classroom for a while, you may notice a big difference. With the online classroom, discussions that often would take place face-to-face back in the day are now taking place in forums, and students are getting graded on those discussion forums. Writing well can definitely pay off in that scenario. Additionally, almost every class these days has a writing component or a research paper. So if writing does all of these things, it seems that we should seek confidence in our writing, but how do we do that? Well, that's what we're here to talk about today. One way to grow your confidence as a writer is to expand your vocabulary. The better your understanding of the English language and English vocabulary overall, the more confident you will be that you're using the best words that you can to communicate what you want to communicate. One of the best ways to expand your vocabulary is to read, like we talked about just a few seconds ago. But other ideas are spend time wordsmithing. Find words that better express what you're trying to convey. Keep in mind that you should be looking for words that improve clarity, not just word count. And you can do this with anything you write, not just papers that are getting graded. However, you still want to be careful with that thesaurus. It's a great tool when used well, but I've read many papers from students where I can tell that that student just went crazy with the thesaurus and the sentences no longer make any sense at all. So you have to know the parts of speech for the words that you're looking to replace. Like you can't replace a noun with a verb and have any hope of maintaining the original intent of your sentence. And you can also look through your paper, or you can have a friend look through your paper to see if you continually use one word over and over again, because we do that with our vocabulary naturally. We get stuck. So if you do, mix it up. It will be much easier and more enjoyable to read your writing if you aren't saying things like the researcher said, or the researcher said this, or the researcher said that every time you quote a source. And if you use superlatives like best, greatest, or most throughout your paper, be careful that you aren't diminishing the value of what you're saying, because everything is presented as over the top. This will also help the flow of your paper. We can also use technology to help expand our vocabularies. So Word Up is one of the first AI-powered English language vocabulary builder apps. There are a number of word of the day apps available. These help you focus on growing your vocabulary consistently. Some vocabulary builder apps take a flashcard approach, so if you're into that. And there's also 7 Little Words, an app that includes letter puzzles. Or you can just play fun games like Wordle from the New York Times every day if you want to expand your vocabulary. And this is by no means an exhaustive list. Apps abound in the area of vocabulary improvement, so pick a few, see what meets your unique needs. So now we're done with vocabulary. Let's talk a little bit about other little things you can look for that make writing unclear. If I say any of these and you think to yourself, oh man, I do that, well, then all I have to say is, of course you do. These are writing problems that even professional writers have. So first is to just avoid redundancies. And this isn't just redundant words, like I mentioned before, but redundant ideas expressed in different ways. Try to mix things up to show your range, and be especially wary of repetition in the conclusion of your essay. The conclusion is so hard to write because we sometimes get there and we're like, I already said everything I want to say, so I'll just repeat it. Focus on word choice, not just word count. There's a difference between use and utilize, or build and fabricate, or think and realize. Choosing the correct word will make your point stronger. Be careful about clarity when you're using pronouns. If you're writing about 3 women and you keep saying she did this, but she did that, your reader's going to have a tough time figuring out who is doing what. Make sure it's clear when you use a pronoun that you're referring to the right person. If you can't make that clear in that particular sentence, it's just not coming together, then use the proper noun instead. And reduce wordiness. We all want to sound smart, and we think, oh, if I use more words, then I'm going to sound really smart. But usually you just make it more confusing instead. Eliminate as much of the fluff as possible in academic writing. You want to get to your point and you want to make it clearly. And use the correct verb tense throughout your essay. If you start with a present tense voice, and then you talk about a past tense action, and then you talk about what might happen in the future, all within the same sentence or the same paragraph, your writing becomes very convoluted. Ensure that all of your word tenses are in agreement with one another. And usually, just as a rule of thumb, it's usually best to write in the past tense when you're talking about history and research because it's already happened. But the key objective here is to always try to find that clarity. And finally, watch your sentence structure, especially when you've gone through many changes and edits. Some parts of the sentence are going to get left standing apart from where they were first written. That's if you do a lot of copy, paste, cut, paste, that kind of thing during that editing process. You can be left with like fragments or run-ons, and you don't catch them at first because you become so familiar with your paper, so familiar with your own writing that you just gloss over things. This is why revision, which we're going to talk about in a moment, and reading out loud is a really important part of your writing process. Also helpful to being more confident with your writing is increasing your reading comprehension. In just a moment, Alexis is going to focus a little bit more on this, but in the context of improving vocabulary and confidence, action words are very important. Imagine for a moment that you got an assignment and it had no action words. Well, how ridiculous would that be? How could you possibly know what to do? Now imagine for a moment that you're given an assignment and you do not understand any of those action words. Just about as useless, right? So increasing your vocabulary and understanding of common action words is going to help you comprehend what you're reading and essentially be able to do better on the assignment. So the next time that you do get an assignment from your instructor, try circling all the action words. Here are a few that you might see. If there are any that you don't understand or you don't know how to interpret in the context of this particular assignment, then take the time to look it up or talk to a tutor or your instructor and add them solidly to your vocabulary so it's very clear and there's little question about what it is you're being asked to do. For example, if you were asked to summarize, that's very different from analyzing. Summarizing is putting something into your own words. Analyzing is interpreting and examining evidence. Analysis requires a much more in-depth explanation. So you want to make sure that you don't summarize something when you were asked to analyze it. So we're feeling more confident, let's say, because we've had a better understanding of what we're reading, but exactly what are we reading when it comes to academic writing? What we will probably read most is other people's research findings. So let's take a look at the research process. Research is a 6-step process, and most papers you write in high school or in college or in grad school are going to be research papers. They may not be labeled as such, but if you have to find evidence for your paper, that's research. So the first step is searching. And this includes Googling and going to the library or through your digital library or finding books or videos or just orienting yourself to the materials that are available to you. Step 2 is note-taking. And this includes assimilating what you found in that research process and figuring out how to incorporate it into your topic and the argument of your paper. Steps 3 and 4 are outlining and writing. And this includes preparing for what you're going to write and then doing the actual writing itself. Because writing is much more than just cut, copy, paste. It takes critical thinking and deep concentration. As you write, you bring the notes that you took from other sources to back up your own thoughts. So just note that writing is step 4. So there are 3 things you have to do before you even get there. And sometimes that takes a couple days. Step 5 is to give credit to the sources that you used in your research and worked into that writing. This includes citing your sources throughout your writing and formulating a reference page with more detail about how to find those sources. And then lastly, step 6, and that's revising. This is another step that a lot of writers skip because maybe they ran out of time. The paper's due at midnight and it's 11:50, or they're sick of thinking about this darn paper, or they're just tired of reading their own writing. So you always want to schedule time in advance for revision so you can be prepared with a fresh brain. So maybe you spend a couple days writing, but you always give yourself another day to revise before you submit. That's why starting a paper on a Sunday night is never a good idea if it's due on a Sunday night. So you know you need to find sources, but maybe you're not sure where to find the best ones and what is considered a credible or scholarly source. Here are a few tips. Most libraries, schools, and universities have electronic databases, so you can look for that database link on your local library or your school's website. You might specifically check out ProQuest or ERIC or Google Scholar for scholarly articles. Focus on primary sources. This means that you use the original document instead of someone else's summary of that document. It's better to read the original yourself than to rely on someone else's interpretation of it. It's like playing the game of telephone a little bit. Look at the domain suffix. .edu and .gov and .org websites are generally reliable sources on the on the web, but beware of political sites that are used to sway public opinion. Use these sites with caution, of course, checking for credibility and authority. Company websites usually end in .com. So beware of all of those things when you're looking. What is the agenda? What's someone trying to promote on this website before you determine whether or not that's a credible one that you should use? Over the years, Wikipedia has become more reliable as a general source of information. Some instructors will allow you to cite Wikipedia in your paper and others won't. However, Wikipedia is a great starting point, especially if you look at the sources cited at the end of a Wikipedia article. So this is part of the reference section at the end of a Wikipedia article about frogs. There are 234 references listed, along with 7 suggestions for further reading. So this is a great place to start when you're hunting for those primary sources. In fact, the references or further reading sections of anything you read, like a journal article or a book, that's a great place to find source material. Also check the dates of your sources. If you're citing something that's more than 5 or 10 years old, it's no longer credible because more research has likely been done. The world and the issues have changed. This is not relevant, though, if what you're citing is a historical event, because history doesn't change. Also, examine the author's credentials. If you're not sure whether or not the author is a credible source, look them up, see what they do, and then go with your instincts. We have another webinar called Critical Thinking and Research Skills, which really dives more deeply into this topic, and I'll share that webinar hub with you at the end, so you can check that out if you're interested. So Alexis, tell us a little bit more about decoding the directions we are given in an assignment so we have a solid place to start with our writing.
Sure, Amy. So let's get into how you decode directions. You get an assignment, you read the prompt, and let's be honest, it's a lot. By the time you're done reading it, you feel like you have no idea what you've just read. Where do you begin? It may have felt overwhelming because we aren't wired to absorb everything at once. So let's break it down into bite-sized chunks. First, what's the actual assignment? Chances are, no matter how long or confusing the prompt was, there was a question to answer or a topic to explore. It's often right at the beginning or at the end of the prompt, and it's probably something simple like, do you agree or disagree with X? Or compare and contrast Y and Z. Now, when you go back and look at the details of the prompt, you're reading with intention. So you've got the purpose of the assignment in your head, and now you're gathering the details that your instructor wants you to include. The wording of that assignment is key to figuring out the purpose. You can write a wonderful essay about all the different perspectives people might have on an issue, but if the question was, do you agree or disagree, and you don't make that clear, you aren't completing the assignment as directed, and you can't get an excellent grade. By starting your essay knowing which direction you need to go into, you will ensure that you end up in the right place. Finally, who is your audience? Is your instructor your only audience? Who else might read this? Will it be posted online? What are your readers' needs and expectations? And what does that mean about the tone that you should take? What you do with this information depends on your style. As you begin to think about how you want to organize your thoughts, rely on what's comfortable for you. Maybe you're a color coder, So color code each detail that you need to include, or number them in a way that makes the most sense to you. By the way, you don't always have to write your paper in the exact order of the prompt if that doesn't make sense to you. And do these steps the same way each time you get a new writing assignment. That way you will immediately and instinctively know what your notes and organizational choices mean without having to think about it. So let's look at examples of action words. A compare and contrast essay is much different than just discussing two things. You have to indicate how they are the same and how they are different, rather than just explaining one thing and then just explaining the other. Additionally, if you are asked to compare the politics of Ronald Reagan and Barack Obama, for example, you will not be taking a position about whose politics you prefer. Comparing is not the same as forming an argument or an opinion. If you are asked to describe the use of humor in Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, you're not critiquing the work overall. And if you are asked to summarize the findings of multiple scientific research papers, you're not presenting your own findings. As Amy had discussed earlier, the action words within a prompt will guide your approach to the subject. So once you know what you are writing about and what evidence you'll be using in your essay, you need to organize your essay by preparing an outline. An outline is key to knowing what you will say in your essay before you start writing it. And the best outlines are simple. Start with your introduction. Your introduction should not only be your thesis statement. The best essays begin with a hook, some small thing that grabs the reader's attention and pulls them in. It could be a question, a thought-provoking quote, or a statement, for example. You do not need to write your hook in your outline, but have an idea and maybe make note of it. Remember, this is a hook, not the whole fishing rod. You will reel in your reader to agree with your argument through the rest of your essay. Then comes the thesis statement. Sometimes the thesis statement doesn't reveal itself to you until you have all of your body paragraphs fleshed out a bit. So let's talk about your body paragraphs. In your essay, you will build out 3 or more body paragraphs. Let's take a look at one body paragraph for now. And remember, you should repeat the same process for each one that you write. First, write out the main idea of the paragraph. Think of this as a mini thesis just for that paragraph. Then list at least 3 pieces of evidence that you have found or hope to find that support the main idea. These can be references that only you understand, as long as you are sure that you will use that evidence later. You also don't always need 3 pieces of evidence in every single paragraph. Maybe you'll have more, or maybe you'll have less. But if you lean towards having 3, you are more likely to have enough evidence to make your point in each paragraph. And if you can't find any evidence to support your ideas, you're probably on the wrong track. After you outline your introduction and body paragraphs, you should outline your conclusion. In the conclusion, you will restate your thesis. There should be a slight revision with more emphasis at the end. But your thesis is still the key to your essay and needs to be brought up in the conclusion. Then take one sentence to summarize every one of your body paragraphs. You don't need to write it down word for word in the outline, but instead as a brief summary as a note to yourself. Okay, so you might be thinking, this is a pretty simple 5-paragraph essay. This seems like the basic thing I've always been taught. Well, there's good reason for that. This is a pretty solid and basic structure for an essay. If you get more comfortable, maybe your 3 ideas, then move into multiple paragraphs for each idea. This is just a beginning. This isn't the best version of every possible essay, but it is a guarantee to make your essay work from the start. You might also be thinking, I don't have time to do an outline every time I write a paper. But here's the concern. If you don't have an outline and you just start writing, there's a good chance your paper won't be cohesive. It's more time-consuming to have to rewrite it than it would have been to just outline it first. And finally, making your outline in this order is important. But when you sit down to write the essay, you don't have to start at the beginning. Maybe you have writer's block about how to hook people with an amazing opening line. So don't start there. Write a body paragraph first, or craft a great thesis, and maybe that opening line will make itself clear. So now let's discuss plagiarism. In order to be a strong writer, you have to write your own work. You also won't gain the personal satisfaction and confidence from submitting someone else's work. From submitting your own work if you submit someone else's work. Academic integrity encompasses plagiarism as we all know it. It means copying someone else's work. But did you know it also includes copy pasting from a website without citing it? It's pulling from a paper that you wrote for a previous class and using it again for your current class. It's using ChatGPT to write for you. But don't let the fear of plagiarism paralyze you. Just think of it this way: you're doing your best to be honest. If someone told you a fascinating story and you were absorbed, it was so good that you wanted to remember every detail so that you can relay it to someone else later, you'd listen intently. You'd commit that to your memory and then you'd hold on to it as best as you could so you could do it justice when you retold it later. This is the same principle you should use when writing and researching. You're taking in good information and you're respecting that information. You want to make sure to give credit to the person who shared it with you, just as you would a story. When you sit down to research and write, you need to be methodical about how you take notes, document articles that you read, and gather ideas. You have to find your own method, but a well-defined system will help you with your confidence. It's a great feeling when you get a topic for an assignment, begin the research process, and have your paper come into focus. Forming a clear argument by reading articles that support your thoughts and figuring out how to organize all of these thoughts is very satisfying and will give you a confidence boost. When you do your research, if you are organized and methodical, you are more likely to avoid plagiarism pitfalls. So take good notes and make sure that you always document the articles you read as you read them. I usually copy paste the URL or the citation from the article into my notes first. Then I document the ideas that I like from that article. This helps me remember where I found my ideas. Another consideration when writing, staying organized, and taking notes is to make sure your reference page matches your citations. For example, something instructors often see is a reference page with 6 articles listed, and only 3 of those are cited in the paper. Where did the other 3 go? Remember, you don't need to include an article in a reference page if you didn't use it and cite it in your paper. The reverse can also be true. Sometimes an instructor will read a long research paper where citations exist within the document, but there's no matching reference for those citations on the reference page. This is a small but very important misstep that can cost you points from your grade. Take time to make sure that all of your hard work researching and retelling is checked and rechecked and is evidenced by citations and a thorough reference page. So let's go over a few steps for better writing that can also help you with academic integrity. Don't rush. Writing is a process. It takes time, consideration, planning, and revising. This goes hand in hand with avoiding procrastination. You're doing yourself a disservice if you don't leave enough time to go through the full writing process. Research indicates that procrastinating results in a lower grade than if the work had been done with enough lead time. If you really go for it and experiment and let your writing flow, you'll need to go back and check over what you've written. As Amy had already mentioned, many writers dread revising because it seems like so much extra work when they've already done the writing. But revision is where good writing really happens. It separates the mediocre from the great. So go back over everything, looking not only for grammar and spelling mistakes, but also for unnecessary words and awkward structures and confusing sentences. Aim for clarity, strength, and freshness. While you're revising, you may want to read it out loud. Hearing it and hearing where you pause, where you trip up, where you need to take a breath, will help you edit more effectively. Start and end strong. The most impactful parts of your writing are at the beginning and at the end. The beginning sets the roadmap for your paper and helps both you and your reader set expectations. The end is the last thing your instructor reads before they give you a grade, so that's important too. Spell and grammar check. Don't forget to do this. Grammar check will often catch the words that are spelled correctly but used incorrectly. You know those words that can have 2 spellings and mean 2 different things? They're called homophones, and we accidentally mix them up in our writing sometimes. Think of words like there, and there, or cite with a C and cite with an S. The grammar check will sometimes but not always catch these when your spell checker doesn't. And finally, check the rubric. I'm going to pass it over to Francesca now for some help with reading a rubric.
Thank you, Alexis. So here we have the incredible rubric. Now, most people might not think them incredible, but I am here today to share why they actually are. Although at first glance, rubrics can feel overwhelming, knowing how to read and understand each component can be a game changer for your writing assignments. Rubrics are very important. Instructors use them to grade all different types of assignments. Because instructors use this as a grading tool, it is essential to review it and use it to your advantage. It lists all components that will be graded and how they will be graded. Using a rubric as a guide will help you be more successful. Many times, rubrics include nuances and details that are not found in the general instructions. For example, the assignment may tell you to use evidence, but the rubric will specify to use 5 to 6 pieces of evidence from at least 3 different sources. If you had just read the directions, you may not have considered how much text evidence or the amount of sources needed. Once you've read the rubric and ensured your assignment is meeting the criteria, you can confidently submit the assignment knowing that you've done your best work. To help us internalize a rubric we are working with, let's first look at the smaller pieces of the bigger puzzle. Although they can vary in format, most rubrics will have a grading scale that is located at the top. If you see this on a rubric, there is a column for an A paper, a B paper, and so on. Your next step is to look down the column and see what criteria is needed for each grade category. This can help you determine what grade your assignment would fall under. It is great to use as a guide to see what you need to continue to work on before submitting your final copy. Go down the column for the desired grade and be sure your assignment has those parts included. Printing out your rubric and using it as a checklist can be very helpful. You can highlight and mark it up for what you might need to change or add. You want to look for any verbs or anything that's telling you specifically what to include. If there's anything in the rubric that you're unsure about, underline or highlight that and touch base with the instructor to get further clarification. Or you can even reach out to a tutor for some additional support. Keep in mind that columns usually equate to a range, not a specific numeric value. If you get into the A column, that could be a 93% or a 95%, but it does not always mean you made 100%. It's important to remember that these are ranges, but it is up to your instructor to decide within that range where your specific assignment falls. Taking the time to get feedback is an important step in the writing process. This not only helps you get a better grade, but it helps you grow as a writer overall. It is important to get feedback as early as you can. Don't be afraid to ask for feedback and make changes based on that. The earlier you ask, the more time there is to make edits and changes. Next, go back into your writing and apply that feedback before you submit the assignment again. It is imperative to show your instructor that you took the time to apply their feedback and make changes to improve your overall assignment. As you engage in this writing process, remember, don't take the instructor's feedback personally. View critique as something that helps you grow and become a better writer and a stronger student. Be open to what others have to say and what advice they gave you about improving your writing. Feedback helps us all learn and grow. As you apply changes that might be new or unfamiliar to your writing style, don't be afraid to go outside of your comfort zone. When we struggle or work through something challenging, we learn and grow. Yes, it can be difficult and uncomfortable at first, but the rewards of having a growth mindset are worth the effort and discomfort. Lastly, don't expect perfection. Writing is called a process for a reason. Even the most seasoned authors and writers create multiple drafts and apply many edits and revisions before getting to their final draft. One of my favorite quotes is, "The greatest opportunity you have for growth lies within your allowance of mistakes." Having a perfection mindset can stifle our creative process and our overall growth. And as we are talking about feedback, remember that you can ask for help from a tutor. We have tutoring just for essay writing, and our tutors can help you throughout the entire writing process. If you need help clarifying what the assignment is asking for, if you have a rough draft and want someone to tell you if your ideas are on the right track, or if you're looking to polish up an assignment, our tutoring service can help you in these areas, and it is a great way to get feedback from someone who is not grading your paper. This makes it low stakes, but high gain exercise. And the best part, it'll help you grow your confidence in writing. So let's look at a few ways to get our writing started. First, talk before writing. Sometimes it helps to have a conversation about our upcoming writing task or assignment with friends, family, or even fellow students. Asking others to be a sounding board can bring clarity to your initial thoughts and wonderings. Next, generate ideas. Use the pre-writing stage as a perfect time to come up with a list of potential ideas. Do a brain dump and write down everything that comes to your mind. You don't have to use them all, but many times continuously writing down what comes to you can help you brainstorm ideas that you didn't even know you had. You can create a word bank. And if you don't want to create one, you can even find one for your grade level online. You can add pictures or drawings next to the words if you would like. Word banks can help you gather words when you can't find the right ones to use. And you can use it to strengthen your vocabulary and understanding of the English language as well. Next, read models. There's nothing better than looking at examples of good writing. Remember what we said in the beginning of this presentation. To be a good writer, you need to read. Find joy in reading model writings. Get a feel for different styles. Make a list of things you like or even don't like, and even save one or two that you connect with as a sample for yourself to refer to as you're creating your own writing piece. It is also very helpful to use prompts. This is a great way to get ideas when you just can't come up with what to write about. Prompts can spark your ideas and get you started. You can take that prompt and add it to it in your own creative way. A great place to find some awesome writing prompts is just to Google writing prompt generator. There are some amazing websites that come up that are great resources for you to get ideas. We will add a few of these links in the chat at the end of our presentation today, so you can save them for easy access. But here's an example of one that I really do enjoy. This is Servicescape. You can go in and pick the type of genre you want to write in. So let's say fantasy. Then let's choose superhero fantasy. Then you click submit and multiple story starters come up for you to use. There are normally 20 or more that you can choose from. Read over them and find one that sparks your creativity and interest. At the bottom, they note that you are free to use these ideas as starting points for your next story, and you don't have to credit them. But if you would like to, which they would appreciate, they tell you how to do just that. Another great step is to use your peers for review. Your peers can be a great resource for your writing. They can give you honest and constructive feedback. And because they are looking at your writing with a fresh pair of eyes, they may notice things that you just don't. The best writers and authors have beta readers for this very reason. They take feedback from their readers, go back, they revise some more, and do the process again and again until they have the writing just the way they want it. Another great tool, and my absolute favorite, is to use graphic organizers. They are great writing guides for you in your planning process. Here's an example of one from EBSCO. You can use these to map out your thinking ahead of your time or organize your thoughts as you are writing. You can use sentence frames and even paragraph organizers to help break down and chunk out your writing. Lastly, leverage technology. It is part of today's world and can be a huge help to you. Definitely use it to your advantage. Use spell check, Grammarly, the built-in thesaurus. When used correctly, technology can be a great asset to you as a developing writer. The only way to get better at writing is to do it over and over. If you have an opportunity to practice writing in any context, take it. If you're in a class and the teacher asks for someone to take notes, volunteer. If you have questions about an assignment or lesson for your instructor, try writing an email instead of just going up and talking to them. Create a personal notebook to engage in journaling. Write a paragraph a day about what you're thankful for or what went on that day. These kinds of writings are more relaxed because you're not getting graded and just practicing. There is no pressure to be perfect. And write about things you care about. When you are writing about something you are passionate about, have a lot of background knowledge in, or have an interest in learning about, or even a story that you can remember in great detail, that is where your writing will take a life of its own. It'll be more fun and easier to write about the things you care about. So choose topics that are close to your heart. I always had my students do a heart map at the start of our writing units. It is a really simple idea and one that you can do at home. Draw a big heart on a piece of paper and divide it into all different sections. Write about things or memories that are important to you. Then, when you find yourself in that writer's block space and can't think of anything to write about, take out that heart map for inspiration and ideas. You will be amazed at how much it really works. We will drop these links for the writing prompt generators into the chat below. Feel free to copy them and save them as a resource for your writing. And now I would like to pass it back to Maxine for some final thoughts before we end today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So yeah, before we get to some of those questions, which I saw some come in, I did just want to remind everybody that next month we have our final webinar this year talking about teamwork and collaboration. So I do highly recommend that you register for that. And if you aren't able to join, there will be a recording for that sent out. Again, there will be a follow-up email in the next couple of days with a recording of this training and as well as a PDF version of the PowerPoint. So you'll have access to all of the resource links that we've talked about. And then also just feel free to follow us on social media. That way you can see any of our other upcoming webinars that we have throughout the year. And additionally, you can find all of our previous webinars over on our YouTube channel. Just search tutor.com/YouTube webinars, or you can go to tutor.com/webinars, and that will bring you to our brand new webinar hub. Now, when it comes to questions, we did have a couple of things come in. First, what I wanted to highlight is some folks reached out and let us know about some additional resources to help determine like validity or credibility for some websites. They weren't ones that I recognized, and I'll let Amy and the rest of the team kind of jump in just a moment. But that's something that we will take a look at, and potentially in the future presentations, we can include those as resources
Yeah, those are
as well.
great. Thank you to Linda for providing those for us. We'll check those out.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Linda, for that. And then in terms of, where are the links for the tools? Let me go ahead. It looks like that might have been included in the wrong chat. So let me just drop
Yep.
those here.
Thank you. Thanks,
No
Maxine.
problem. Of course. All right. So everybody should have access to all of those links now. And again, this is the type of content that will be in that follow-up email as well. So keep an eye out for that. We did get one question coming in asking, like, when it comes to writing a paper for a class, how can you identify when your paper might be becoming too long? And if the length is an issue, how do you decide what content to cut from that essay?
Ooh, that's a very good question. I think generally a lot of times the instructor is going to provide a word count. So you always want to stick to that. That helps to for you to kind of narrow down exactly what they're looking for, because sometimes if the word count is just whatever, you could go on and on forever. I also think that another way is, like Francesca was just talking about, the rubric, to really check the rubric and see what is it exactly that the rubric is asking for. If the rubric is asking you to use 5 pieces of evidence and you've got 20, then you know that you don't need to go that much. I would say that's definitely another good sign. So really just paying attention to the assignment directions and paying attention to that rubric can really help form what it is that you should be writing. In terms of other ways to know that you're writing too much, Alexis, Francesca, do either of you have any other suggestions for how you would know that? That's a good question.
Sure. So one of the things that I like to do is I like to print out the rubric and then color code each section. And then if my paper is too long, which I tend to be an overwriter, I will go back and highlight each paragraph or sentence to make sure that it directly correlates with something that's in the rubric. And then I'll so it ends up being color coded. When I am not able to highlight something because I can't directly match it with what's on the rubric, that is what I will trim out. And so that's just an easy way if you've written too much to make sure that everything that is in your paper is absolutely needed for turning in.
That's really good. Also, just watching that repetition, like we talked about, a lot of times if you've written too much, you're repeating yourself. So really looking for that redundancy that you might have, making sure you're not doing that is another good sign. So, again, have someone read your paper for you, have a peer look at your paper, meet a friend somewhere or trade papers with a friend in your class and have them take a look at it and let them know what you're concerned about. If you're worried your paper's too long, ask them, do you think my paper's too long? And where did you find that I seem to be going off topic or whatever?
Awesome. Thank you. It doesn't look like we have any other questions coming in. So with all that, again, you will all get a follow-up email with all of the information that we talked about, the presentation, a recording for you to review, and all of those links that we mentioned. So keep an eye out for that. And also, again, keep an eye out for our upcoming webinars so that you can join those and learn a little bit more about teamwork and collaboration. But thank you all so much and have a wonderful rest of the day.